Something deep is moving behind the silence, and this is not small, random, or easy to ignore. While everything may look still on the outside, a final choice is forming inside them, and your presence is at the center of it. They may act calm, they may seem distant, they may even look completely unaffected, but inside something has become too real to keep pushing away. This is no longer just about memory, it is no longer just about emotions they tried to hide. It is about the truth your connection woke up in them, and the truth is now asking for an answer. Stay with me, because what happens in a person before they finally choose is often louder than anything they ever say out loud. And if you have been feeling this shift lately, trust that feeling, because the silence is not empty anymore. It is full of pressure, full of reflection, and full of a decision that is getting harder to delay. For a long time, they tried to outlast this connection. They buried themselves in routine. They filled their days with noise, work, distractions, pride, and emotional distance. They told themselves silence would make everything smaller. They thought distance would weaken what they felt. They hoped time would turn something powerful into something easy to forget. But some connections do not fade just because they are ignored. Some connections become stronger in silence, because silence leaves a person alone with what is true. The more they pushed this down, the more it kept rising inside them. The more they tried to move on without looking back, the more their mind kept circling back to you in quiet moments. And now the story they once told themselves no longer feels believable. The old excuses are losing power. The old defenses are getting tired. One part of them keeps reaching for you with a force they cannot fully explain, while another part still tries to resist, because accepting this truth means dropping the mask, lowering the guard, and being honest in a way they may not be used to. If this is speaking to something you have felt, keep listening, because the deeper part of this is only starting to show itself. What they are facing now is not a passing thought. It is not a light feeling that will disappear in a day or two. It is a full inner struggle with real weight. On one side, there is warmth, memory, longing, comfort, and the sense that something about you felt rare and deeply alive. On the other side, there is fear, old pain, disappointment, and the protective voice that says, stay guarded, stay careful, do not risk being hurt again. These two forces are meeting inside them again and again, and the pressure is building. They may still move through normal life. They may still laugh, work, talk, and keep themselves busy. They may seem fine, but the real struggle was never outside of them. It has always been inside their own heart and mind. That is why this moment matters so much. This next step is not only about whether they come closer or stay away. It is about who they choose to be when truth becomes stronger than fear. You became a turning point in their life, even if neither of you fully understood it at first. Something in this connection reached beyond their habits, beyond their control, beyond the version of themselves they had carefully built just to survive. Now they are standing before a choice that cannot be delayed forever. They can stay inside the limits of the person they have always been, or they can step into a new version of themselves, one that asks for softness, courage, honesty, and emotional risk. That is why you may have felt the push and pull so strongly. One moment they seem open, the next moment they withdraw. One moment they feel close, the next moment they create distance again. This does not always come from games or manipulation. Sometimes it comes from someone wanting the connection but fearing the change that naturally comes with it. Because loving deeply changes people. Being seen clearly changes people. Being near someone who awakens a truer version of you can feel beautiful, but it can also feel terrifying if you are still attached to old ways of protecting yourself. As this pressure keeps growing, old illusions begin to fall apart. They can no longer convince themselves that you were just a brief phase, just a passing chapter, just someone easy to replace. They are being pushed to see you more clearly now. And even more than that, they are being pushed to see themselves more clearly. And that kind of clarity, once it starts, is very hard to stop. There comes a point when uncertainty becomes heavier than the truth a person is trying to avoid. They are getting close to that point now. For too long, they tried to manage their feelings by shrinking them, denying them, minimizing them. They said it was not that serious. They said it would pass. They said it did not require action. But something deeper inside them knows that is no longer true. Emotions like this do not stay small forever. They grow in silence. They wait in the background. They return late at night, in quiet afternoons, in the strange stillness after a busy day ends. Thoughts of you keep returning naturally, not because they are trying to think of you, but because something unresolved keeps bringing your presence back into view. Your absence has had power here. By stepping back, you left them alone with themselves. That silence became a mirror. It showed them what was missing. It showed them the comfort, spark, depth, and emotional safety your presence once brought into their world. And when a person starts comparing the rare feeling they had with you to the emptiness of everything else, they begin to understand that this was never ordinary. If you have sensed this quiet return of energy, trust it. Silence often does the work words could never do. Inside them now, desire and fear are no longer softly competing. They are colliding with full force. One side is pulled toward you with warmth, curiosity, memory, and a feeling that something real still exists. The other side is still afraid of losing control, exposing wounds, and stepping into a future that cannot be fully predicted. But for the first time, desire is starting to sound louder than defense. That does not mean the battle is over. It means the balance is changing. It means what once protected them is starting to feel like a prison. They are beginning to see that staying in the middle, neither fully present nor fully gone, has cost them their peace. That draining loop cannot continue forever. Eventually, a person has to take responsibility for what they feel. Eventually, they have to decide whether they will live safely but emptily, or honestly and fully. That is the edge they are nearing now. And if they seem unsettled, emotional, or distant at this stage, do not mistake that for the end. Sometimes what looks like distance is actually the final pressure before movement. Sometimes what looks like confusion is a person breaking out of old patterns they can no longer carry. Keep listening, because the next part is where everything gets even more serious and the silence starts turning into direction. When someone sits with their own thoughts long enough, truth rises above the noise. That is what is happening in them. This shift is not coming from outside pressure. It is not just because of loneliness or timing. It is growing from within. Your connection keeps showing up in their quietest moments. It appears when life slows down. It returns when distractions fail. It surfaces when they try to focus somewhere else and still find themselves drifting back to what was felt between you. And this repeated return is changing how they see the whole story. What once seemed confusing now begins to look meaningful. What once felt accidental now starts to feel purposeful. They are beginning to realize they were not only missing a person, they were missing the version of themselves that came alive around you. More open, more honest, more emotionally awake, more real. That realization changes everything, because once someone sees that they lost not only you, but also a deeper part of themselves, the question is no longer whether the connection mattered. The question becomes whether they are brave enough to return to the truth it revealed. Busy days, crowded rooms, goals, plans, and constant activity can only distract a person for so long. Beneath all of that, one quiet current keeps leading back to the same place, back to you, back to what was real, back to what still feels unfinished. This is where the protective ego slowly begins to lose its grip. The ego wants control. It wants safety. It wants distance at any cost if distance feels easier than vulnerability. But there comes a moment when the pain of total disconnection becomes heavier than the fear of closeness. That is where they are moving now. They are weighing two futures. One is familiar, controlled, and emotionally flat. The other is uncertain, risky, and deeply alive. For the first time, the unknown is beginning to look more valuable than the empty safety they once clung to. That is how courage starts. Not when fear vanishes, but when truth becomes more important than fear. And with that comes a different kind of stillness. The panic is not gone, but it changes shape. It becomes steadier, clearer, more focused. They are not resisting every feeling anymore. They are starting to let those feelings speak. They are beginning to accept that what they feel is real. That acceptance brings a kind of quiet peace, even before anything is fully solved, because inner conflict is slowly turning into inner direction. They are standing at the edge of an old life, looking toward a new possibility, and the bridge between those two worlds is one honest choice, one moment of truth, one step they can no longer avoid forever. Now the silence is reflecting them back to themselves in a way it never did before. It is showing them where pride stood in the place of honesty. It is showing them where fear blocked love and where avoidance created distance that never had to exist. They are revisiting past moments with new eyes, conversations, looks, pauses, missed chances, the times they wanted to speak and did not, the times they felt something deeply but let ego make the decision instead. They are not only looking back with regret, they are reordering what truly matters. matters. Things that once felt important, image, control, self-protection, emotional distance, are starting to feel hollow compared to the depth of something real. And another shift is happening too. Empathy is growing in them. They are starting to feel your side of the silence. They are beginning to understand what their distance may have felt like for you. That kind of understanding softens a person from the inside. It humbles them. It makes emotional coldness harder to maintain, because once responsibility enters the picture, everything becomes more serious. They are no longer just reacting to fear. They are becoming more aware of what they do next and what it says about them. And when someone reaches that stage, the next choice becomes deeply meaningful. Not loud, not dramatic, but real in a way that changes the path ahead. The final layers of hesitation are beginning to thin out. The old thoughts of maybe later, maybe someday, maybe when it feels safer, are starting to lose their power. In their place, a stronger feeling is forming, a sense that something must be faced now. They must acknowledge what is real. They must stop wasting time inside emotional paralysis. They must decide whether they will keep hiding or finally act from truth. Time itself feels different to them now. It feels more precious, less endless. They are starting to understand that staying stuck is also a choice, and often the most painful one in the end. This clarity is not only mental, it reaches the body. They feel it in the chest, in the tension, in the pressure that rises when they think about reaching out, speaking honestly, or making a real move. The unknown still scares them, yes, but the familiar emptiness of staying disconnected is beginning to scare them more. That is why movement is getting closer. Words they kept down are rising. Actions that once felt impossible are becoming harder to avoid. When truth grows this strong, silence stops feeling safe. It starts feeling unbearable. And whatever they do next will not come from impulse alone. It will come from a long, hard, honest process of finally facing themselves without excuses. That is why this moment has so much weight. At the center of all this, one truth keeps standing taller than every excuse that came before it. You changed something in them. You reflected back a part of their potential they could not fully see on their own. You became a mirror during a time when they felt unsure of themselves. You became a quiet force, a catalyst, a steady emotional point they could feel even after the distance grew. That is why the impact never really left them. Even in silence, it stayed alive. And now that awareness is reaching a deeper level, the noise around them is fading, the path is becoming clearer. The question is no longer whether this affected them. The question is when they will fully act on what they now understand. Layer by layer, confusion is falling away. In its place is a quieter certainty they can no longer ignore. They realize now that trying to control their feelings only made those feelings stronger. Pretending not to know the truth is no longer working. If you have been sensing this deep internal shift, trust that instinct. Something very real is entering its final stage inside them. They are being pushed toward a moment where they must decide if they are ready to live from honesty instead of fear. And your role right now is not to chase, not to force, not to manage the outcome. Your role is to stay steady while truth does its own work. Let them feel the full shape of your absence. Let them understand the value of your presence without you having to explain it again and again. Let them sit with the cost of pretending they feel less than they truly do. The person who once stayed divided is nearing a line they will not be able to cross back and forth forever. Their inner conflict is turning into clarity one step at a time. And when clarity arrives, it changes everything. Because then the question becomes simple. Will they choose the safe mask or the honest heart? Will they return to the controlled life that protects them but keeps them empty? Or will they step toward the truth that asks for courage but offers something real? This is why the quiet before a decision can feel so intense. It is not empty space, it is pressure building, it is truth gathering force, it is old identities weakening while a new choice prepares to emerge. If this part is hitting you deeply, stay with it, because there is one more layer that matters more than all the others. This is not only about whether they return, it is about what kind of person they become when life finally asks them to stop hiding. And sometimes that transformation begins long before a single word is spoken out loud. There is also something important you need to remember for yourself. Their delay is not proof that you were not enough. Their silence is not proof that the connection lacked meaning. If they walk slowly, hesitate, or struggle, it does not erase what was real. It only shows the depth of what this connection asked them to face inside themselves. Some people do not fear love because love is weak. They fear it because love is strong enough to undo the walls they spent years building. That is why this process has felt so heavy. It is not casual. It is not surface level. upheaval. It is a confrontation with truth, identity, memory, fear, desire, and emotional responsibility all at once. And while they are moving through that, your strength matters too. Stay centered, stay clear. Do not shrink your value just because someone else is still finding their courage. The right next step, if it comes, should come from honesty, not from pressure. It should come because they finally understand what they feel and are willing to meet it with action. That is the kind of movement worth trusting, not rushed words, not empty promises, real movement, real effort, real truth. And if that truth is indeed rising in them now, then what is unfolding is not small. It is the kind of shift that changes the future quietly before the future changes out loud. Sooner than it seems, one truth will rise above every defense, every delay, every reason they used to stay hidden. And when that moment fully arrives, it will reveal exactly who they are and what they are willing to do when life asks for courage. This